So who remembers when local music used to be the thriving hubs that labels and industry people would pluck the next rising star from, right? Those days are pretty much gone, right? That's dead. But here's the thing. You still live where you live. So the question remains, why would you not take advantage of that? The local music scene is one of the quickest and fastest places to get leverage for your music business. You can get funding really quickly. You can start to build your core audience, right? So I've even had a lot of musicians who I work with that are like, no, the local music scene won't support you until you blow up. Here's the thing, that's not true. I can tell you from someone who's built their initial core audience locally, there is a right way to do this and a wrong way to do this. So in this video, I'm going to be helping you get unstuck in your local music business, goals, and I'm going to help you actually start to progress. So the first thing that we need to look at is a piece of advice that is kind of harsh, right? So I know a lot of people are maybe not going to make it because this is really tough to hear, but it helped me out because once I understood really what was being communicated to me, it absolutely changed the game and for my mindset, which is be worth a damn, right? So my mentor told me that, and at first I was kind of offended, like, what, you're saying I'm not worth a damn? It's like, listen, I'm not talking about your intrinsic humanity. I'm saying your worth to the show. Be worth a damn. And I was like, okay, so that means I have to write good songs, right? So that's the first, first and foremost, the songs have to be good, right? So I know a lot of you focus on the songs, so we're not going to talk very much about that. The next thing is you have to be well performed. Now that's something not a lot of people do. See, me and my band, we try to meet regularly. We meet once a week, and we've done that for 10 years now. Now, there's obviously times where people are sick or there's weather or something's going on, right? So it's not every single year, but that's the goal. Every single week, if nothing's going on, we are meeting every single week. And so people don't typically have that sort of consistency. Now, some people will overdo it because people will hear the stories of Kurt Cobain and Nirvana, like they used to practice 5 times every single week. Or it's like, you don't have to do that, right? Once a week is good, but you need consistency because that's how you build that cohesion as a group, right? So you need to be well performed. So you need to be to the point where you're not like focusing on your performance. You're not thinking about it. You can just be there, be present, and just go with the flow. Now, the other thing that you need to be worth a damn, quote unquote, to a local show and to be even considered for the opportunities that will help you there is you need to be someone who's good at your communication. So your communication, that can be well communicated with the label, or not the label, excuse me, with the venue, with the promoter, right? Whenever you're setting up the details and all the different terms, just being clear with your communication, being prompt with your communication, not rambling and things like that. It's very, very important to be precise with your communication with, like I said, the venue, the promoters, things like that. But you also have to be well communicated on stage. You have to be in a position where when you're talking to an audience, it's not just like, what's up? You guys having a good time? All right, cool. That's not going to be very entertaining. You have to actually start to dive into some of the strategies that make people interested in you. And by the way, just as an aside, very soon, March 4th, I'm going to be doing an interview with Paul Ross, otherwise known as Ross Jeffries, and he's going to be talking about how you can be more persuasive whenever you're talking to mass groups of people. So make sure to subscribe. This is a little side note if you're wanting to learn more about that. We're going to be having that interview, and it's going to be absolutely crazy. But as an aside, being well communicated is to me, that is how you can maximize so much, whether it's like how well you're building your relationships within your network in your local scene or monetizing an audience whenever you're selling to them. And when I say selling to them, it's not like you're pitching from stage, but there are things that you can do. So I can't wait to talk about that with Paul Ross. It's going to be so cool. But okay, we understand that aspect of it. And then it gets a little tricky. The first 2 steps are going to require a bit of, I don't want to say lowering of standards, lowering of expectations, but understanding the long-term play here. You have to go through 2 phases to really build up your local scene, okay? The first scene, or the first step here, the first phase is the saturation phase. So what does that mean? You take as many gigs as you can possibly fit into your schedule, right? Does that mean playing for free? Yes, it does. Because think about this. You're not doing this because you're because there's a way to do this without being labeled as a band that doesn't get paid. There's a way to do this where you're showing, hey, listen, we're new to the scene, so you can't really count on many people to come see us. Let us just come provide value to your show. We'll get a couple fans, and then we can start to come back and bring people back every single time. That's the positioning you do. You don't just go, we'll play for free. That's lowering your status in their eyes. And so they're going to be like, oh yeah, this is just a band, we'll play for free. You're not explaining that, listen, the reason I'm playing for free is because we're brand new, right? So just test us out. And if we're starting to bring people back, then we can talk about splits and guarantees, right? Then they're like, okay, yeah, that sounds totally reasonable. Now you're getting them to commit in the future to actually compensating you, but you're doing this as a way to get your foot in the door. And you're doing this with a lot of different venues, a lot of different promoters. Sometimes people won't want you to book a gig that's too close to them in proximity within a certain date, because they don't want you to have competition with your own shows, so that the audience is like, I don't know who to go to, I don't know which show to go to, and then it's dividing, that you want to keep your shows relatively spaced for the promoters. But in the saturation phase, you're kind of trying to figure out every single way around that possible. So what did we do? So I'm in Oklahoma City. So one of the things that we did is we started playing at venues like, some of these do not exist anymore. Actually, in fact, all of these don't exist anymore. But it was Leon's Lounge / the Chameleon Room. There was the Voodoo Lounge. There was Thunder Alley. There was these 3 different venues that we would just hop through and just try to get as many gigs as we could in those spots, because we knew that it's like, nobody knows who we are. And so then it would get to the point where promoters are like, I don't want to put you on, I just kind of put you on, like, let's let some other bands come out there, and like, I don't want to put you on too much. So it's like, okay. Then what we started doing was hitting the cities around us. We started hitting up like Lawton, Tulsa, Stillwater, McAllister, El Reno. There was all these different cities around Oklahoma City, for those of you that don't know that. So we're starting to expand our market a little bit, but it's not like we're going 5 hours out, 3 hours out, right? We're staying at max. Tulsa from here is like an hour 45. So it's something that you can go there, do the show, and you could make it back in the same evening. But that's kind of the limit, right? We try to keep it within that sort of, in the saturation phase, we try to keep it within that. You could go boom, 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 and just knock those shows out, right? So what you're doing is building up a presence so that people start to go like, oh, who is this band? Now the question comes up, Dax, how long do I do that? Well, every band is going to be a little bit different. I recommend that you try to make this phase as short as possible, but what determines when it's over is when you're starting to notice the drop. So here's what it kind of looks like. You start playing your initial shows. You get a group of people, and then you start playing more shows and more shows and more shows and more shows, and you're building up this little nebulous of people, right? And so you start to recognize who they are. You start to see their faces, right? It's only going to be in the beginning like 10 to 15 of them. So you're going to be like, okay, I know who these people are. I can visually spot them out. And every time you start going to shows, you'll notice they'll come out. They'll come out. But then all of a sudden you'll notice only like 1 or 2 of them are coming. Maybe 3 or 4 of them are coming, but the other ones aren't really coming in as much anymore. What's happening now is you've saturated yourself within that marketplace. So people are starting to think to themselves, I won't catch this one, I'll catch the next one because you guys are playing so often. Because this is just like a psychological process that people go through. At first, they're like, who is this art? We're trying to get them to that, who is this? I keep seeing them. I keep seeing them all over the place. I'm going to go check them out. They're playing with this other band. Yeah, let's go see it, right? And then it builds up this little bit of buzz that you've seen this band around or you've seen this artist around. I use the term band because I'm in a band, so that's the one that just comes out like naturally to me. But for I know for other people, it's just you're being a solo artist, so forgive me. I'm going to use band from now on, but you know what I mean. So you're going out there and you're getting your name out there so that the local scene knows who you are. But then there comes the point where people start to, like, they know who you are, but they know now that they don't really have to have any urgency to come see you because you're not like the new act in town that, oh, I'm seeing them getting gigs all over the place. They must be doing really well, because that's the perception that fans have, right? So once they stop coming, you go into the withdraw phase. The withdraw phase is now you start playing gigs more sparse and sparse. you play them once every quarter, which is like once every 3 months, right? You start to break into these little pockets of gigs. Maybe you'll go do a run of gigs on the weekend, but they won't be in your local, where you're based out of city. They'll be in some of those regional places. So for us, that would be like McAllister, Lawton, Tulsa, Stillwater. We would go play those places. And then once every 3 months, we'd show up in Oklahoma City, right? And play that. And then they were like, oh yeah, we haven't seen you guys in a minute. Yeah, let's all go out and see you guys. Okay, boom, boom. Now we've got more people coming in, and there's probably a bigger crowd now because it's mixed in with the other acts that we're playing with. And so the promoters are like, okay, that's pretty good. Now you're starting to make some waves. So the withdrawal phase is really important. So now that here's the problem, you're going to get hooked on playing on stage. Because playing on stage is by far and away the most fun part of being a musician. But there has to come a point where you start to make yourself more valuable by restricting access to yourself, okay? So in the beginning, you market yourself fundamentally is what you're doing. You're getting your name out there, put the brakes on, and now they're only seeing you every now and then. So during the saturation phase, you must absolutely be collecting email addresses and phone numbers through this process. That is a 100% must, because as you're going through the saturation phase, you're going to be meeting a whole lot of people, and you need to get as many of their contact information as possible, because now you can, whenever the withdrawal phase kicks in and you're only doing the show in that area once every 3 months, now you can hit them with an email like, hey, new show, ticket link inside, or something like that, or whatever. You're starting to drive people into the new show that you're putting on once every 3 months. So there's this bit of exclusivity and scarcity involved around it. So let me get some water. It's very late right now. It's like almost midnight. So forgive me if I'm stuttering a little bit. It's been a long day. Been talking all day. As you could tell, I'm a yapper. Okay, it's what I do. So I just yap all the time. All right, so we've got the two phases. We got the saturation phase. We got the withdrawal phase. So now you've made yourself a little bit more valuable, because you're not being just at every gig, no matter what, even if they'll pay you nothing. Now it's like you're kind of, every time you're playing, you're requesting that you get a door split, or you get at least $100 to $200 guarantee. For people in the cover band world, they're like $100 to $200. It's like, keep in mind, we're playing for 30 seconds. Not 30 seconds, 30 minutes, right? The cover bands are playing for like 6.5 hours. Of course, they get paid more. It's very hard for people to listen to 6.5 hours of original music, because most artists don't have 6.5 hours of original music, but that's neither here nor there. Once you get to that point where you've made yourself valuable, it's valuable to start actually expanding. That's sort of the next phase. I'm not going to go too much into that, because that goes outside the purview of the local scene. But the next phase is going regional, going into the states nearby that are just like right across the border, slip over the border and that kind of thing. So you can start to become a regional act. Now, the last thing we really need to talk about, this is really cool actually. This is something that once we started doing, we started having the best shows. Far and away, forming a syndicate is one of the most valuable things that you can do. Now, Dax, that sounds scary. What is a syndicate? I don't know. It's a really cool word, right? But it's a group of people who have an interest, right? And what is that interest? Putting on the best shows possible so they can play in front of as many people as they can, sell a lot of merch, sell a lot of tickets. What we did is we found acts that we liked. This is kind of something I've talked about in other videos, where I go through like the harsh realities of local music, and that like a lot of bands are just not that good, and they're given a platform, and it's okay because they're getting their chops up. But still, that doesn't mean you have to go support them necessarily. If they're not good, you don't have to support them. But if they're good, you want to go support them. So you will develop your favorites in your scene, and what you want to do is try to form these alliances with these bands. And you're doing this too because hopefully the people in your scene are awesome people. We're very lucky that the bands that are in our syndicate are fundamentally really awesome human beings, and we love hanging around them. So it's just natural. We don't even really, it's not like there's like a contract. It's like, this is a syndicate that we're forming. We have our Facebook group and everything. It's not like that. It's basically we're getting together to put our audiences together every single time. So it's like there's crossover there. Now, how many people should you get into this? Well, you first and foremost, you have to pick very strategically. You can't just be going and getting any band willy-nilly like, oh, you guys are forming like a cool alliance between bands I want to be in. I hate to sound like it's freaking, what is this, like at the lunch table, there's cliques and stuff forming? No, it's not like that necessarily. It's not like you can't play with bands who are not quote-unquote in the syndicate, because how else will you find more bands that you could potentially add to it? But one or two acts on a bill, depending if it's a bigger bill, maybe 2 or 3 acts, will be a part of this alliance. So for me, I'll just give a shout out to this band that I really enjoy, is a band called Pet, right? Just Pet. They used to be called Pet Toad, Pet. So if you look for either one of those, you will find them, and they're awesome. We would always play shows with them because, one, we enjoyed their music. So that's what I said first and foremost, you have to enjoy it. So we enjoyed their music. We thought our crowds would blend really well together, and we started to do that more often. We started to play more shows together where it would be Kira and Pet and then like 2 other bands. Kira, Pet, and 2 other bands. That started to happen a few times, and then we met a few more bands after that. Another one of those bands that came back, and I'm very excited about it. For those of you that have watched my videos, I've talked about them before, Atris. They're kind of coming back to make more music together, which is really cool. And they were sort of a part of that as well. So there would be shows where it'd be Kira and Atris, and then 2 other acts, and Kira and Atris and other acts, and then Kira, Pet, and Atris in another act. So you see what's happening here is you're finding those people who really fit nicely together in a set, so that whenever the bands are being played or the artists are being played back to back, it's a nice complementary set of music, right? It's there's nothing worse when you get a night of exactly the same stuff. I'm not going to lie. So, for example, Pet, we enjoy them, but they do not sound exactly like us. Atris, we love those guys, but they do not sound exactly like us. We're enough in the vein that the people that come to the show are like, yeah, I know what show I'm being a part of. It's not like country, reggae, rap, polka, jazz. It's like, what's going on? No, it's consistent across the theme of the night, but it's diverse enough that their ears are like, oh, everything is like different. It's very nice. So you want to think about it like that. You don't want to find just bands that sound like you. So that's the first step in forming a nice local syndicate, is picking strategically, okay? And then you have to get enough in there to be able to cycle. That's a key thing, is the people that you work with, if you just do the same show over and over and over again, fans may not want to come see that as often. But if it's mixed up, right? Like I said, I just used 3, because 3 is a good place to start, because you can do 2 of those bands. I'll take my band out of the equation. So it could be Kira, Pet, but it could be Pet, Atris. It could be Atris, Kira, and then you see what I'm saying? There's different combinations that you could utilize so that you're putting on shows on a regular basis, and you'll find that whenever you're trying to book shows, having a bill, like getting all the artists and bands that are going to be on the stage that evening, that's kind of the hard part that keeps things in lockstep. It's like, yeah, we're trying to put the show on, but do we have enough acts, and are they good? All these questions come up. So when you're booking, you could always leverage that. You could always say, yeah, and so one of these bands that we're bringing on the bill with us, we play with them regularly, and so our audiences are like friends, and so it's going to become a nice little crowd for you guys. That sounds more attractive than what most people are doing whenever they're communicating to promoters. They get all shy and they don't want to talk about that kind of stuff. But if you have those relationships, leverage that whenever you're booking a show. Leverage that. You're like, I have these people that we play shows together all the time, so that way like half the bill is already booked. You don't have to get very many people. And you could ask the promoter, hey, based on our genre, who's your favorite act that you feel is like drawing a decent amount of people? And they'll be like, oh yeah, we love these people. They bring in a lot of people all the time. And then you can go see if they'd like to be a part of your gig and leverage it that way. Maybe that's another person that will join the syndicate, and they have a bigger audience than you, hopefully. And so now you get some more fans, and other people in your syndicate get more fans as well. And that just opens up more possibilities whenever you start to do show collaborations in the future. Because even if the new band that you played with never really joined your syndicate, both bands in your syndicate will have grown their audience. So now whenever you do those combination shows together, they're bigger audiences. So this is sort of what we would do. We would play a bunch of local gigs, did the saturation thing, we withdrawed, and then we started figuring out how do we put on good shows every time we start putting on shows. So when we started doing that, we started noticing the crowds were way bigger. We would start filling up venues that headlining acts would fill up, right? We would see almost the same amount of people, and we were like, this is crazy, because we're just a bunch of local acts. So and Dax, how did you promote it? Well, email list, social media. If you got text numbers, sending one text about a gig is a good idea. We were hitting it from a few different angles. In some cases, we would do ads. That was a little bit rare back in the day. We didn't do that as much. We didn't think to do it in that time frame. This is 2013, 2014. So when you get to this point, you have enough bands that are growing together that you can strategically put on shows that you can guarantee or at least be more certain of profitability. When you're putting on a gig with bands you don't know all the time, it becomes very unpredictable. I can tell you that firsthand. Whenever we started playing in that saturation phase, there was a lot of gigs we took on, even once we went regional, that we didn't know who we were playing with. We didn't know if they had an audience or not, but we would just take a risk on it because we're like, hey, we get somewhere to play. And it didn't always work out for us. So I want you to make sure that you form this, and I'm giving it a name that's kind of cool and edgy like a syndicate, but really it's just a group of people that have a shared common interest of wanting to put on the biggest and most profitable shows possible. And by doing that, you start to form these alliances with other artists that you know. And here's the other thing too. You're not just leveraging bodies here. You're leveraging everyone's networks as well. So it's not just like, oh, I'm helping you out with your gig, you're helping me out with my gig. It's like, I have a group of people that I have in my network of contacts. You have a group of people in your network of contacts. So you never know. It's like some people in another group or another band or another artist may have contacts to venues, promoters. Those are the big contacts. It's like a new venue that's like, yeah, we need people to come play. Or the promoters that book the regular venues that you'd like to be at. And so now to finish this up, how do we have total local scene domination? What we can do is we can start to look at combining all these things together a little bit. And when we start to pick out gigs, you can identify gigs best by identifying the venues that you would like to play at. Figure out who are the promoters. Now, be within reason. I understand you'd probably like to play the arena. Me too. Find the gigs that are of the capacity, and when the literal capacity, not just like, oh, in my arbitrary thoughts of where I am in my music business. I know, I mean literally like maybe a 50 to 100 cap room, so the capacity of 100 people. Start there, figure out who are the promoters or the venues that put these shows on. You'll either be contacting venues directly to put on gigs, or you'll be contacting promoters. That's just the straight up works of it. So for example, whenever we started to play in our local scene, we developed a relationship with TLP Productions because they were putting on all the shows. And now we have a great relationship with them. They think of us for certain gigs that they feel we'd be a good fit for. And then we've had lots of great opportunities to play fantastic gigs because we made a relationship with people who saw potential in us because we put on a good show, but we also knew these are the people to know, right? And these are great friendships that you can develop. There's lots of cool memories that come out of the local scene. Let me tell you that for sure. So I just feel bad because a lot of artists do not leverage it to its fullest extent and they miss out on the community that exists within local scenes. And yeah, it's just kind of sad when we don't do that. So to finish this out, we need to look at it like who are the promoters, who are the venues, or what are the venues, I should say, rather, and how can we start to penetrate those markets? So start reaching out to their Facebook, start reaching out on their websites. Maybe they list out their email. There's a great resource that you can utilize. It's called Indie on the Move. Indie on the Move. It's not Indie on the Go. It's Indie on the Move. And yeah, I get those confused sometimes. But what this site does, I think you could sign up for a free account, and all you you put in your information and you get access to a database of venues. Now, here's the downside. The platform's been around for a long time, and so not every venue knows about it necessarily. And so sometimes you'll see general information on venues like, oh, it just has their phone number from Google and their website, and there's no real booking information. But there'll be lots of venues that have that information. But the other downside is some of that information may be old, and so there's a new talent buyer for this particular venue. And so you'll have to just double check on those things. So like one of the things you can do is if you see a talent buyer in Indie on the Move, you can call the venue, and when they answer, you're like, hi, I'm blah, blah, blah. I'm an artist, or I'm blah, blah, blah from this band, and we were interested in putting on a show. I just have a quick question. Is Michael still the talent buyer for y'all's shows? Usually they will either say, oh yeah, Michael still does all our shows. Would you like me to put him on the phone? That would be fantastic. Thank you. Now you can get the show booked right then. Don't be afraid to hop on the phone. Or they're like, oh yeah. Do you want me to give you his number or his email? Yeah, that would be great. Thank you. You can start to get contact information that way. Or they say, no, we had to let Michael go for a number of reasons or whatever. They'll be like, oh, he's no longer with us. The new talent buyer is blah, blah, blah. And then even if they don't initiate, would you like his contact information? You initiate it. Yeah, Barry is the one who does our stuff now. Oh, thank you so much. Would you mind giving me his best email or best phone number to reach out to book the gig? Oh yeah, here it is. Here's his number. And if they don't give you one or the other, ask for both. If they're like, oh yeah, his email is blah, 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 blah. Hey, okay, great. Do you happen to have his number by chance as well? Oh yeah, great. And if not, you get what you can get, but you're just trying to get as much information as possible. And you can't be afraid to hop on the phone. I'm just saying, if you're going to do these local gigs, you can't be afraid to reach out to people, DM people, or hop on the phone. You have to put that fear aside because that's what's going to move you forward ultimately. So, these are the ways that you create local scene domination. You start reaching out to promoters. You start reaching out to the venues that you would like to play and that are of the caliber that you can actually put together a nice little gig. Start making relationships with the people that you play with along the way in the saturation phase as you start to go bam, bam, gig, and you're just playing as much as you possibly can, right? But remember, in the beginning, you got to be worth a damn. You got to write the best songs you possibly can. You got to be as well performed and tight on your performance as possible, and you have to be great at communication, not just in the setting up of the gigs like we've mentioned, but also in your communication with the audience. And like I mentioned, Paul Ross is going to be joining us for a live interview on March 4th at 12 p.m. Central Standard Time. It's going to be great. So if you've got some questions of how to be more persuasive subtly from the stage and using your words in a way that can be super persuasive without being over the top obvious about it. Because, people say, Dax, how do I sell without selling? I'll be like, oh, it's actually really simple. You grow up. It's like, how do I breathe without breathing? How do I run without running? How do I eat without eating? It just doesn't work. You see what I'm saying? So like, obviously you're going to have to sell, but how do you be as subtle about it as possible, but still effective? Because subtle doesn't always mean you're not selling it. It just means you're being strategic with your words and you're actually establishing value. And we're going to be diving into that with Paul Ross. It's going to be super great. I hope you guys hit the subscribe button, the notification bell, all that kind of good stuff. And if you'd like some one-on-one help, setting up your music business, building out the direct response systems necessary to start reaching out to your fans through your email list and start selling offers through your email list, click the link that's in the description. We have a link where you can apply for a one-on-one coaching call to see if it's a good fit to help you out with your music business. Otherwise, I look forward to seeing you in another video of Musicians Ignite. Take care.